Good. Okay, here we are. Parashios Matos and Maseh this week. And our subject today is going to be called perfection, achieving perfection, and according to the Rambam. And what we're really going to be discussing is the tension, the dynamic, the two opposing forces, but with one same goal. The two opposing human forces, which is the drive or the force to withhold ourselves, to limit ourselves. The people have an interest and put a tremendous amount of effort into self-control. And opposing this is the opposite drive of self-expansion, associating with everything, participating in everything, making everything part of ourselves. We're going to see both of these addressed in the parsha, and what we're going to do when we compare and contrast them and work with them we're going to work with them to show how they both come from one drive, one source, one goal, and are meant to both in different ways achieve the same goal. And in order to go through that process, we're going to start with the Chumash, and we're going to go through the Rambam. And there's a lot for you to take home and read over Shabbos. Some is in English, but there's some in Hebrew, so you can do it with a friend. If your Hebrew's not strong, it's worth doing. And thank you to my right-hand man, Tanya, who without with her, none of these would be here. So here's how we start. Okay, the opening of Parshas Matos. Everybody look in your sheets. You can look in the Chumash too, but you can look in your sheets. Perek Lamed Pasuk Gimel. Okay, look at the pasuk. A person, each means every person, man or woman. Ki yidor neder la Hashem. Okay, if you make a vow to God. Oh, hishava shavua, or you take an oath. Lesor isar al nafsho, to impose an obligation, a restriction, a limitation on oneself. Okay. Lo yachel devaro, he shall not break his pledge or profane his words. Kachol hayotze mipiv yaseh, everything to carry out, he must carry out all that has crossed his lips. This is the halacha regarding when a person takes a neder, we're going to use the Hebrew words, or a shavua, and that is to forbid oneself something. This is what we call the urge to assert self-control. Okay. Now there is a difference between a neder and a shavua, and I left you a little space to fill in your notes here. Rav Hirsch explains the following. I'm going to read it so you'll very concretely there you'll see clearly what the difference is between a neder and a shavua. Okay. A neder can apply only to a concrete object, not to an action, not to thinking, just an object itself, like grapes. I will not eat grapes. Okay? Or rather, the formulation of a neder, to be precise, is the object is essential. Grapes are forbidden to me. Wine is forbidden to me. Who makes such a neder? A nazir, which we didn't mention it, but it's right before this. An object becomes forbidden. I decline to take advantage or experience or indulge myself in this object. But it's the object that is specified. The object is now like hektish. I can't touch it. Okay, I'm not allowed to use it. The emphasis is on the object. That's a neder. Then Rav Hirsch goes on to say, as opposed to a neder, a shavua applies to the personality and the determination of its will. A shavua is when I, not the object, I impose a restriction on myself, and I am the main point of this. I will not drink wine. Okay, now you might think this is semantics. Wine is forbidden to me, or I will not drink wine. It's a question of focus. The difference is to identify that when we say wine is forbidden to me, we're identifying wine as a separate object. And me and wine are no longer connected. We're not going to have a relationship. Okay, so I am outside of the wine. It remains, I see it as a foreign object that I don't indulge in. Okay, for whatever reason, we'll talk about that in a minute. When I say I will not drink wine, it's a different emphasis. I and myself, and I don't include the drinking of wine and my personality. It has nothing to do with an outside object at all. It's not about distinguishing myself from something else. It's entirely about myself. It's all about me. I am a person who doesn't drink wine. I'm sober, not an alcoholic anymore. I don't drink wine. Okay? The difference is very important, and we're going to see that. How we think about ourselves and how we think about that which is not ours. What's the relationship between things outside ourselves and ourselves? That's what we're dealing with here. And the Torah is identifying there's two different ways of operating. One is to say, there's an object, and I don't have anything to do with that object, and your focus is a separation between yourself and the object. Well, that's a neder. A shavua is not about the object at all. It's who am I? Who am I? How do I operate? What do I do? What are my values? What do I, express myself with? And how do I not? How do I, where do I assert self-control? And I do not allow anything like this to be part of my self-expression. It's all about me. Okay, shavua. We're going to develop it further. We'll develop it further, and we're going to see it in the parsha too, a distinction between something that relates entirely to me and my identity versus my relationship to something else, okay? Clearly you see that in a neder, you're reaffirming your relationship to something else. In a shavua, you're just talking about yourself. You're just building yourself and concretizing who you are, okay? That's number one. That is the difference between a neder and a shavua. Now, my grandfather here has a beautiful piece relating to this is one of the first subjects of the parsha, now the last subject of the parsha. And we're going to see the contrast and this idea expressed in a different way.
Lots of pages.
Lots of pages. I will
The last 2 pages.
Yeah, and I'll go, it's all Hebrew, but we'll go through it in English. Okay. If you look at the pasuk, okay, in the parsha, in the end of this week's parsha, there's 2 parshas for the end of Matos, Perek Lamed Beis, 32, Psukim 41 and 42, okay? So this is what it says, and we have mentioned this in the past. Maybe we'll trigger some memories here. So we're talking about the conquest of the land by the Jews on the other side of the Jordan, okay, Me'ever LeYarden. We know only a couple of Shvatim got that territory, Reuven, Gad, and half of Menashe, correct? Alrighty. So when we're speaking about the territories that Menashe got, so it says, V'Yair ben Menashe, so Yair the son of Menashe went, halach, V'yilkod es chosehem, V'yikro es chavasehem, V'yikro esen chavos Yair. So he went and he conquered these villages, and he called them, okay, his name was Yair, so what did he call the villages? Chavos Yair, Yair's villages. Okay? Yair's villages. And we have many examples of that, right? When somebody names a town after them, what towns have a name? Allentown, okay? Somebody's names their conquests after themselves. Now, continue. But there was another Menashite, and his name was Navach. But Navach halach, Navach went, but Yilkod es Knas Vespanaseh, he conquered this area and her little mini villages surrounding her. Vayikra la, and he called, it's feminine, her. He called this territory. What did he call them? Navach Bishmo. He didn't call them Navach's villages. He just called them Navach. He called the territory that he now was in charge of his own name. It's like I have a car, so it's Esther's car, or I could actually name my car Esther. Okay, that's what he did. Right? People like you name right. The object had a name, and it was his name. Now. Clearly, this is an expression of a person who sees everything as part of himself, correct? As opposed to the person who's clearly identifying by the neder, by the shvua, what is not part of myself, okay? This is an expression of someone who sees everything as part of himself. His cities are called his own name, no distinction. So, Rashi says, that on that last word, the third to last word, Vayikra la Navach b'shmo, la is supposed to be her, meaning the villages. It's supposed to have a dagesh in the hay. That's called a mapik hay. Very good. But it's missing. So Rashi says that he saw in the foundation, the work of Rav Moshe Hadarshan, the reason there's no dagesh in the hay, no dot, it doesn't say la, is because it really, without the dagesh, it's not like pronounced strongly. It sounds like lo, like lamed aleph, no. In other words, this is an indication in the Chumash that they would not call this territory Navach for very long. It wouldn't last very long. It wasn't called Navach after a short time. It lost its name. In other words, the pasuk says that he called it Navach, but there's a missing dot in the hay, which turns the hay into a soft hay, not a strong hay. So it can be pronounced not like la, but lo, like lo. So as if the Torah is telling you, okay, that no, this name didn't last. He called it his name, but it faded away. Years later, you see in Navi that Chavas Yair are still called Chavas Yair, but you never hear about Navach anymore. So the message here is that a person's possessions really are not part of themselves, okay, and that and that's a fantasy. And it fades, clearly it becomes very evident very quickly that a person's possessions are not them. Okay? You can't take it with you, they don't do what you want, they're not them. Now, my grandfather goes on to say here, which is an idea we're going to come back to later. Even mitzvahs, objects of mitzvahs, a shofar, a mezuzah, an esrog, okay, tzitzis, a sukkah, even if a person devotes themselves entirely to that mitzvah, identifies with that mitzvah, that mezuzah is not them. The shofar isn't them. Even for mitzvahs, physical objects do not become the person. Of course, not mitzvahs, just material goods, do not become the person. But there are aspects of our life that do entirely become us. And they're not objects, clearly. They're not going to be objects. What are they going to be? Achievements, personal achievements. All right? Torah, we're going to see the Torah, the wisdom we have, our midos, development. We're going to talk about midos today. Yeah, there are things that do become a person. But objects do not become a person. Okay? The one who makes a shavua says, I am a person who is sober, right? And alcohol is not part of my life. So that is that's entirely, the identity of the person. Whereas and they understand that, and they're describing, things that a part of themselves, a new commitment that can never be taken away from them. As long as we're dealing with something outside ourselves, an object, a possession, or even an object of a mitzvah, it's not me. No matter how hard I try. No matter how hard I try, it's not me. If I make challah, the dough is not me. Okay. So, in terms of possessions, Chazal, you can read my whole grandfather's piece, it's clear. Chazal are trying to tell you, stay away from this trap that many people fall into, which is associating themselves with what they have. Believing that that these objects offer them or contribute to them some type of identity that cannot be separated from them. It can always be separated from them. It's not who they are. Okay, we're going to take this further. We're going to develop this idea very deeply, looking into the Rambam and the Mor Nevuchim regarding what is perfection of a person and what is not. What we're about to do now is we're going to look at a pasuk in Yirmiyahu that Rambam bases his last entry in the entire 3-part Mor Nevuchim, Guide to the Perplexed. The entire Mor Nevuchim, which is about what we believe and how we think, the deepest philosophy of the Rambam. Okay, all of it culminates in chapter 54 of Chelek 3. And in the chapter 54 is the end of Mor Nevuchim. It's the total like final word. And this, what we're about to read, is chapter 54. Okay, and it's based on a pasuk in Yirmiyahu, which we're going to analyze very carefully, and we're going to try to work out this concept of who am I, okay, and my possessions, and even my objects of mitzvahs, and And what about why do human beings have a tremendous capacity to control themselves, to limit themselves from things? And why do people have a tremendous desire to participate in all things and identify with everything and call everything on their name? And why do we feel so unsatisfied that we don't know everything? That we don't have all the powers in the world, that we don't have what everyone else has? That we don't understand, that we're not strong as the strongest person, that we're immortal, that we're mortal. Why are we dissatisfied that we're immortal? Why do we want to have everything, all life, all knowledge, all control, like Hashem? Be all-knowing, all controlling, all eternal, and we feel dissatisfied that we are lacking these things. We want to be part of everything. We don't want to be limited, and yet there's a tremendous urge, and we've seen people assert enormous abilities of self-control to not be part of things. So what is that? What is going on? And what's the goal of both of them? So this is what Yirmiyahu says. Yirmiyahu, which is the Navi of the Korban, so it's very relevant to prioritizing, right? This is, you see the source, Parak Tes, Psukim 22 and 23. Ko Amar Hashem. Okay, he's talking to a society, a community, a nation that goofed, that didn't do well, that lost everything, correct? Amar Hashem, Al Yishalel Chacham Bechachmato, Va'al Yishalel Hagibor Begvurato, Al Yishalel Asher Ba'ashro. Okay? This is what Hashem says. Don't be so proud, wise man of your wisdom, powerful man of your strength, wealthy man of your riches. Okay? Ki im bezot yitalel. But this is what you should be proud of. Hamitalel. Ki im bezos yishalel hamitalel. Okay, this is what the person should glory in. Haskel v'yeda osi, to have the wisdom, the seichel, to know me. Ki ani Hashem, that I am Hashem. And then he adds another piece here. It should stop right there, right? Look what he adds. V'oseh chesed mishpat u'tzedakah ba'aretz. Ki be'ela chafatzti no'om Hashem. I do chesed, mishpat, and tzedakah, kindness. We'll retranslate these later. Justice, righteousness in the world, in the earth. And this is what I want. Okay, let's analyze this pasuk. He goes in order. We're going to see Rambam speaks in the reverse order. And he's going to explain why Yirmiyahu flips the order. Okay? He says, do not be proud of yourself. Do not glory in your chachma, you chacham, you wise man, that you know so much. What is that? What is the chachma Yirmiyahu speaking about? We have to identify that. Rambam specifies what type of chachma this is. Then he says, don't be proud, powerful man in your enormous powers. And don't be proud, wealthy person with all the extent of your possessions, even if you're a king with the rules, everything. Don't be proud. The only thing you should be proud of, take pride in, is that you understand and you know me, that I am God. That sounds like a good ending to the pasuk. Then he says, and I do kindness and justice and righteousness on earth, and that's what I want. Hashem, after we say, no, don't be proud of everything, only know me, and this is what I do. Why? What is that? Obviously, knowing Hashem clearly is a means, right, to which end? To doing, like Hashem, chesed, mishpat, and tzedakah in this world, because that's what Hashem wants. So knowing Hashem is a prerequisite for doing what Hashem wants. And doing what Hashem wants, chesed, mishpat, and tzedakah, that's what Hashem does. And clearly when we do that, what are we doing? We're emulating. But we can't emulate Hashem unless we understand that Hashem does these things. And in order to understand that Hashem does these things, we have to know Hashem. And that's all much more important than all the three previous forms of accomplishment. Now, let's go into the Rambam. It's very long. I'm not going to read you the whole thing. You must go home and read it yourself. We're going to summarize. Rambam says, first, he says that in the beginning, the ancient and modern philosophers have shown that man can acquire four kinds of perfections. Okay, what people think are perfections. Okay, there's the first three are like the first two. Yeah, we get them. The third one is going to throw us off. Okay, so the first kind of perfection, the lowest, we'll just read the underlined part, in the acquisition of which people spend their days, is perfection as regards property. Okay, this is Chavas, Yair, and Navach, the conversation we just had. The possession of money, garments, furniture, servants, land, and the like. The possession of the title of a great king belongs to this class. There is no connection between this possession and its possessor. Okay, you can all this is something we understand. We just saw it in the Pesukim, and you can read further on your own. Basically, this is a perfection that people spend their whole days on working and striving to achieve this type of so-called perfection. Rambam says it's not perfection at all. It's a zero because, okay. Look at the end. The philosophers have shown that he whose sole aim is in all his exertions and endeavors is the possession of this kind of perfection only seeks perfectly imaginary and transient things, and even if these remain his property all his lifetime, this does not give him any perfection because they're separate from the person. Okay, if you have somebody who is obnoxious and appalling to look at, okay, and completely, completely undeveloped, and everything they say is annoying and wrong and irritating, okay, and they put on a beautiful pocketbook and gorgeous shoes, doesn't make them perfect. No. And if they have a gorgeous house, doesn't make them perfect. No. Okay? If they're a reprehensible person, the kind of person you don't want to be around, that you don't want to see, and you don't want to look at, and you don't want to talk to, okay, for a million reasons, nothing is going to make them perfect that they can buy and put on themselves, or put on their house, or whatever, or drive around in. Everybody gets it. Okay, next, there's another type of perfection, which is a little bit more close to the self, which is connected more to the self. And that is, Rambam says, the second kind is more closely related to man's body than the first. It includes perfection of shape, constitution, and form of man's body. When a person wants their body to be healthy and strong and flexible and energetic, that's the next level up. At least it's me. However, Rambam says that is this a real perfection? No, he says it must likewise be excluded from forming our chief aim because it is perfection of the body, and a man does not possess it as man but as a living being. In other words, it's just part of it's not because he's special that he has this body. Everybody has a body, animals have bodies, and even if he was strong, look what he says, he still could not be as strong as a mule, much less can he be as strong as a lion or an elephant. So what can he do? Carry a heavy burden, break a thick substance, or whatever. The soul derives no profit whatever from this kind of perfection. In other words, you should be healthy, but as a means to an end. It's not an end. Okay, we get this. Now, look at the next one. And this is, now, in Yirmiyahu, he said, do not glory, wise men, in your wisdom, strong man in your strength, and wealthy man in your wealth. So Yirmiyahu's going he's listing them in the direction of what we would consider most worthy. So we've already nixed strength and possessions. Now we're on Chachma. What is Chachma according to the Rambam? This Chachma here. Okay? The third kind of perfection, and this we'll read more closely, is more closely connected with man himself than the second perfection. It includes moral perfection, the highest degree of excellency in man's character. Now, what did Yirmiyahu say about this? Don't glory in your wisdom. Okay? It's not what it's at. And Rambam just said the third level, or the one that people esteem the most, which is why Yirmiyahu put it first, is wisdom, moral excellency, understanding human beings, what they need, what I need, how to interact together, right? Why is this not a perfection? Because look what Rambam says. Most of the precepts aim at producing this perfection. The precepts, all the words of wisdom, all what the philosophers have taught about character development, about being a good person. Most of the precepts aim at producing this perfection. But even this kind is only a preparation for another perfection. And it is not sought for its own sake. Now watch this. For all moral principles, concern the relation of man to his neighbor. The perfection of man's moral principles is, as it were, given to man for the benefit of mankind. It's not for himself. It's for something outside himself. Imagine a person being alone, having no connection whatever with any other person. All his good moral principles are at rest. They are not required and give man no perfection whatever. Okay? These principles are only necessary and useful when man comes in contact with others. So any type of moral development, to be honest so that I shouldn't cheat others, okay? To be forgiving so that the other person, we won't be in a fight forever. To be patient. This all has to do with other people. It's not me. So Rambam says this is not perfection. Moral development vis-a-vis other people, according to Rambam, Yirmiyahu, not what we're looking for. Okay, this is surprising. We usually think this is it. Morality. Ben Adam l'chaveru. He says no. Okay. The fourth kind of perfection is the true perfection of man, the possession of the highest intellectual faculties, the possession of such notions which lead to true metaphysical opinions as regards Hashem. Alrighty? Now, what he's going to be speaking about is that when a person develops themselves in terms of their wisdom and their understanding of Hashem, which we're going to now focus on, that is perfection, because that has nothing to do with other people. It has nothing to do with their body. It has nothing to do with their possessions. It is entirely self-development, entirely self-growth, leads entirely to connection to God, which is eternal connection. Okay? This is what he's going to say. On account of this perfection, okay, it gives him immortality. Look what it says. It remains to him alone. It gives him immortality. And on account of it, he is called Adam. When the Torah wants to call a person an Adam, a true Adam, a Tselem Elokim, a likeness to God, it's speaking about a person who has achieved this, or is aspiring to this. Okay? Look at the first three kinds of perfection. Okay? You will find, if you possess them, they are not your property, but the property of others. Both your possessions, your body that's strong, right? For what purpose is a powerful body when you're all alone and have nobody to defend or, work for, right? So it's all for the usage of others. All utilitarian is the word we use today, okay? But the last kind of perfection is exclusively yours. No one owns any part of it. They shall be alone yours, he brings from prophets, and not the strangers, okay? He quotes a little bit more. We'll skip to the next paragraph. Now he's going to quote Yirmiyahu right here. Alrighty? Look under the quote. See how the prophet arranged them according to their estimation in the eyes of the multitude. You see, that's what people think is most valuable. Wisdom, then strength, then wealth. Okay? All right? The rich man is the lowest rank, right? The mighty man, and then the wise man. That is the man of good moral principles. All right? That's the wise man. Rambam is saying that the wise man, the chacham, is what he's calling the man of good moral principles. Okay, so chachma in Yirmiyahu, according to the Rambam, means good moral principles. A highly, highly developed, ethically, morally developed person. Okay? Alrighty. For in the eyes of the multitude, who are addressed by these words of Yirmiyahu, he is likewise a great man. Okay? This is the reason why these three classes are enumerated in order. Now, keep going, turn the page. All right. He starts talking about mitzvahs. He starts talking about our mitzvahs. The religious acts prescribed by the, here, we can start a little bit earlier here. You'll read it, but he says the religious acts prescribed by the law, vis-a-vis the various kinds of worship and the moral principles which benefit all people in their social intercourse with each other, do not constitute the ultimate aim of man, nor can they be compared to it, but they are preparations for it. So our question now is, if Rambam is saying, based on Yirmiyahu, that moral perfection is not the aim of man, and it is not a perfection, then what is? So Yirmiyahu answers what is. Yirmiyahu says, but to know me. So it should have stopped there. But then Yirmiyahu says, and that I do chesed and tzedakah and mishpat in the earth, and that's what I want. When we think about chesed, mishpat, and tzedakah, justice and righteousness and kindness, what are they if they're not moral, ethical principles? Like, that's what they are. Who do you do chesed to? Who do you do mishpat to? Who are you just with? Who do you do righteousness with? They are moral principles. So there seems to be morality before the knowledge of God, which is disqualified, and another kind of morality expressed in chesed and mishpat and tzedakah after the knowledge of God, which is what Hashem wants. So we're talking about apples and oranges. What is the morality that comes before knowledge of God versus the morality, these attributes that come after the knowledge of God? Is that question clear? Okay, because it's very technical and deep philosophical stuff.
Acceptance, one is transitional, in other words.
Well, what is the big difference? Both are good behavior. Both look the same on the outside. Now, clearly, they've already established that the morality that precedes knowledge of God has as its goal the others, interactions. It's utilitarian. Look, if you kill me, then I kill you. We're not going to be able to live together, okay? So we both agree not to kill each other. If I am always impatient with you and always get angry at you and I'm dishonest with you and then you treat me like that, we're never no society. Societies are based on a moral contract of a certain consideration, trust, understanding. Otherwise, so communities, families, relationships can't work without a mutual agreement, whether it's spoken or not spoken, to behave with morals and ethics towards each other. So, but those morals and ethics are, again, tools to use in relationships with others. They're not me. All right. So now he goes on, he quotes those. So we did this, and he says like this. Look what he says now. Having stated, look, I'm on page 4, second paragraph down. He says, again, I just kind of explain this. The prophet does not content himself with explaining that the knowledge of God is the highest kind of perfection. For if this only had been his intention, he would have said, but in this let him who glorieth glory, that he understands and knows me. And he would have stopped there. Or he would have said, and he understands that or knows that I am one, or that I have no likeness, or there is none like me, or a similar phrase. That if all he wanted to say was you should know Hashem, and that's the highest perfection, he would have stopped. But as we said, he goes on to say, to do these behaviors which I want on earth. So he's going to say, Rambam here, that it teaches us, okay, that, look all the way down. For the prophet thus in conclusion says, for in these things I delight, says Hashem. My object in saying this is that you shall practice loving kindness, judgment, and righteousness in the earth. Okay, again, our question is, what's the difference? Look at the bottom. The object of the above passage is therefore to declare that the perfection in which man can truly glory is attained by him when he has acquired, as far as this is possible for man, the knowledge of God, the knowledge of his providence, and of the manner in which it influences his creations. This is the difference. Tzedek, Mishpat, and Chesed, as an expression of an understanding of how Hashem relates to his creations, that's the goal. Not as a utilitarian, tool. All right? We will develop this. All right? So let's read that sentence again. But the knowledge of God and the knowledge of his providence and of the manner in which it influences creatures in their production and continued existence, okay, that's the goal. Having acquired this knowledge, he will then be determined always to seek loving kindness, justice, judgment, and righteousness, and thus to imitate the ways of God. Okay? So he's saying there's a type of human conduct, behavior, that comes from knowing Hashem, and it is not the same as morals and ethics, which are utilitarian and different societies have developed, and people understand why they're necessary, and people consider perfect, and they're not the same at all. Alrighty? Now, first of all, in order to start to understand this, we are going to an idea that we mentioned a few weeks ago. We're going back to reestablish it, okay, and strengthen it, hopefully deepen your understanding of it. What we have to look at is when you say know Hashem, and know his relationship to his creations, so that we can then see how he operates to us and emulate those actions. What is Hashem's relationship to his creations? That's the question. One thing it is not, okay, and this is philosophical now, so it'll sound a little confusing. One thing it is not, according to Judaism, it is not a relationship of God to something that he created, which is an object, we've been talking about objects today, outside himself. It is not Jewish to think that there is Hashem, who is Hashem, and then Hashem made the creation, and now Hashem is here, and the creation is here, creation meaning everything, and Hashem takes care of the creation, and checks in on the creation, and jumps in when things have to be adjusted, like Kriyas Yamsuf, to the creation, and sustains the creation. That's not how Jewish people think, for a couple of very serious philosophical reasons. Number one, if you say Hashem is here, and outside Hashem is an object called the Bria, the creation, you have a very simple problem that God is limited. Here's Hashem, and here's the Bria. That's not possible. Hashem is everything. Ein od novado. There's nothing that exists that's not Hashem. Then the question is, so what are we? There's another more complicated philosophical problem, which Rambam talks about in the second Chelek of Mor Nevuchim in chapter 11, and Rav Yashaber in this new book on his, which is his essays, his talks on the Mor Nevuchim, okay, edited with an introduction by Lawrence Kaplan. This is Maimonides between philosophy and halacha, okay.